All right. Good morning, everybody. Today is Wednesday, June 8th, 2016. And this is Before the First Cup with Jules here on UCY.TV. Happy Wednesday, everyone. It is a chilly 53 degrees, overcast and drizzly here in upstate New York. It actually feels a little bit like fall after the last week or two feeling so nicely like late spring, early summer. So where do we leave off yesterday? Well, we've been on this kick now, looking at genetically modified vaccines and food, plants, and genetically modified humans. They have announced from Harvard that George Church, a self-professed transhumanist we discovered, wrote a book in 2012 called I don't even remember. Something. Close enough for me. Reanimator, Regenesis, something like that. Talking about genetically modified humans and how amazing that's going to be. And they've pretty much thrown ethics out a window. They had that secret meeting back 3 weeks ago, and all it took was 3 weeks for them to get some funding and start discussing how they're going to create the synthetic human genome. Of course, everyone's saying, no, we're not going to make people. But you know that's going to happen. He who dies with the most money wins and can do the most things, right? It's the way the world works. And if they can create synthetic DNA that can turn you into an X-Men super creature, you better believe that some rich guy with a narcissistic complex is going to want to make manipulation to what he has if it's going to make him more powerful and richer and get more chicks, of course. But what I really find disturbing about all this is that it really seems to me it's not just us. I mean, it started with plants and bacteria, and then it kind of morphed to like agricultural. Like, we've listened to all the Dr. Huber stuff with the farm animals and the GMO foods and the crops. And then they started utilizing through that DARPA Blue Angel program, trying to make that universal flu vaccine originally. And now it's universal synthetic shape-shifting immune systems. But they've been working on this through plants, to enslave plants to start pumping out antigens that they can then use in their newfangled vaccines. That's where that Ebola vaccine came from and a lot of these newer ones. But then they're splicing and dicing genetically modified stuff into it. And they're putting, who even knows? I mean, shape-shifting, learning, synthetic immune systems. They're programming DNA, synthetic DNA strands to do things. And actually, I was just reading a few DNA stories this morning. They found more now about biological DNA. It's not just about the CATG that gives you your traits. There's a second layer, which I hope there's 10 bazillion layers, and I hope everything that they try to do in the lab, they get thwarted. I hope that we are just way more complex than they could ever imagine, and they can't crack all these secrets because, guys, where is this going to leave us? If we have rich people, or maybe these guys aren't even rich, remember, it's all about the science class. Trust the scientists because they know better. But we're finding out that the majority of the research that's being submitted is absolute, utter bullshit. It can't be reproduced. Where are we just hearing that again? But I mean, we covered that over and over again. There were all these different stories that came out from people researching as to whether or not research that has been published is actually legit. And a good majority of it is not, even in the peer-reviewed studies. So if they're taking all this fake false science and pointing at it, going, see, this is why vaccines are good. See, this is why GMO foods are good. And I mean, we are totally seeing right now a Ministry of Truth. It is happening everywhere. And now that new bill, HR 5181, that's in front of the House, in regards to being able to tamp down on internet rumors, propaganda from overseas. Did you see that? And we already got Google working on it here with their truth algorithm, thanks to good old Bill Clinton back during 2011, right after Fukushima happened, saying that we got to tamp down on these internet rumors. Oh my God. And then he got all upset when all kinds of quote unquote rumors came out about Benghazi and Hillary's, inaction during Benghazi that led to Stevens being killed. Those were all rumors, people. And those dumb American consumers don't know how to tell the difference between rumor and truth. So we have to filter the internet. Honestly, this is becoming a world for non-thinkers. And whoever thought we would be in a world like literally George Orwell's quote about those who speak the truth will be revolutionaries or something. And I have that as a header to one of my Facebook pages. Been there for 4 years, 5 years now. And back 5 years ago, it was kind of like, oh yeah, that's the way it's going to be. You speak truth, you'll be a revolutionary. But it literally has come to that. You know what I even found more interesting is this HR 5181. Intimedia did a story about it a few days ago. I think it was Claire that wrote the story. Maybe we can read this. Well, it's going to get me too off topic. But one interesting thing, because I was digging into this long before, I had heard Corbett talking about that 5181, and I dug in and started reading the bill. And I started thinking about the fact that, do you realize, and nobody did a story on this, so I'm going to have to drop this to Claire too, NSA21. This is a brand new NSA merger that happened they announced it at the end of last year, probably October, November. Then I saw a story come out in one of the military publications back in December. January, February, they're getting ready to roll it out and launch it. So that scary dude, Keith Alexander, right? We did 2 or 3 whole days on him back in July last summer out of Wired magazine. If you don't know anything about General Keith Alexander, he was no longer in the military. He now is in private enterprise cybersecurity, but he was the guy that was in charge of all of it. He was the guy that was actually the one responsible for creating all of it. And he brought all the cyber patrols, all the cyber spying, all the NSA, all the military institutions, all under one umbrella. So he made this master monster surveillance center. That was Keith Alexander. Then when Keith Alexander, I don't know, did he get stuck? Was that Petraeus with the mistress? I think Alexander just decided he was stepping down. Time to retire. And that was when he put the feet to the fire. Or J.P. Morgan Chase, one of the big New York City Wall Street bankers, and said, hey, your back-end systems are really insecure and those hackers are going to get you. Those hackers are under every bed and in every closet. But guess what? I started my new cybersecurity firm. And I was the former director of the NSA and Cyber Patrol. Wink. I could help you. And I'm pretty sure it was J.P. Morgan Chase. It was one of the big boys. And they said to Keith, oh, no thanks. Thanks, but no thanks. We don't have $1 million a month to hire you, Keith. And what do you know? They got hacked. Now, no major information got released, but how interesting. The Keith Alexander had said, we'll help you. You got holes everywhere. And they said, thanks, but no thanks. We're not going to be extorted for $1 million a month. And then they got hacked. So Keith Alexander, when he left, Michael, wish I remembered his name. He's such a scary dude. The guy that runs it now, the NSA, Michael something. He's an admiral. I had a story that I was going to share with Claire upstairs, and it's not here. So hold on. NSA 21. Because I really think this NSA 21, there was a recommendation last year from the White House that said, nope, not a good idea. We do not want to merge internal domestic surveillance with external espionage surveillance because there's a conflict of interest. But they've decided that no, that is not how we're going to do it. So they have put now the teams, cyber patrol teams, that were building these little virus apps or finding vulnerabilities in things such as Flash, iTunes. Remember, we've talked about all this. Back 4 years ago, we already discovered that the federal government was contracting with third-party companies that were building like black hat apps based upon vulnerabilities found in software so they can infiltrate large numbers of computers based upon unpatched, insecure software. That hacking team was one of the companies that they were contracting, but there were a couple of them. You know, we found out way back, 2011-ish, about the federal government creating the Flame virus. And I think Flame, there were two of them. I don't know. I don't remember all the names anymore. It's just been so many things. But you know what I'm saying? There were two vulnerabilities that were able to attack power stations. In this case, it was the nuclear facilities. And they got Iran. They think that maybe that could be some of what happened in Japan. I mean, obviously there was a huge tsunami, but the fact that things didn't shut down the way they were supposed to and shit went out of control really bad. People had postulated that maybe Flame had gotten in there as well. I don't know about that. But there were two viruses around that time that had gotten in via vulnerabilities. And they think Israel and the U.S. black ops were involved in that. So now, and of course, then we have just the whole NSA debacle here in this country. Warrantless searches, but don't worry about it because they got rid of the ability for them to just dragnet all information for people who are innocent, and they replaced it with a new bill called the Freedom Act, I think it was. And that's the one thing I was reading in that story. The new NSA guy was saying, well, it's just so much better now because with this new Freedom Act or whatever the hell it is, we can do all this stuff and we can consolidate and we can bring all the external spies and the internal spies and the cyber patrollers and everything together. So we can be spying on American citizens just like we could on international dissidents and terrorists. So the fact that they had just put this bill out into the House, the H.R. 5181, about tamping down on propaganda that's dangerous to this nation. Oh my God. Anybody who opens their mouth and starts talking about what's really going on is considered dangerous to this nation. So are they going to start shutting down foreign forms of media? Like the only real places where after NDAA 2013 in this country, when it was legalized to use State Department propaganda that was only ever, quote unquote, legal outside of this country to utilize in other countries, can now be utilized on its own people. That was made legal in 2013. Look it up. I did because I didn't believe it. It's there. So our own government is utilizing propaganda. Not that they haven't for many, many years, but at least now it's legal. They can point to something and say, look, all under the State Department, mind you, when Hillary Clinton was in there. So it's legal for them to use propaganda against their own people. But they're pointing fingers at news agencies such as, and they didn't name any names, but you know they're thinking it, such as RT, because they talked about the Russian government and stopping their propaganda against Americans because it's so dangerous to the nation. They mentioned China. They did not mention Iran, but you know that is the axis of evil, right? Russia, China, and Iran, because they're not trading in U.S. petrodollars. In Iran, runs state-run TV, Press TV. That's Iranian television. You also had Al Jazeera out there. I don't know if Al Jazeera is still... They did some weird stuff. They pulled themselves off of YouTube and went to that Current TV, which had been owned by, what's his name? Al Gore. But I think Al Gore sold it now. Actually, I think Al Jazeera bought it from Al Gore. And just recently, I had seen that Al Jazeera was selling it, but they had a cable channel and everything. But you couldn't get them on YouTube anymore. Everything was blocked in this country. So I think they lost a lot of viewership. But Al Jazeera was, if I'm not mistaken, news out of Qatar. But so let's put Al Jazeera aside, but let's just look at two sources, RT News and Press TV. You know, those are two news sources that, though I call bullshit sometimes and some of the stuff they say, because you can always see when it's politically motivated, they're two channels, especially RT, that's taking the narrative that we're being fed here and looking under the covers, unlike most of the media in the United States that are handed a script and told to read it. Now, don't think that RT isn't politically motivated the opposite direction, of course. You know, we kind of cheer when they're calling out lies that we've been told and uncovering dirt under the surface. We're like, yay! But always remember, RT is financed heavily by the Kremlin. Just like our State Department finances Voice of America that's spread out all over the world, right? That is the official propaganda radio channel that's played in every language. I don't know how many, but it's huge, huge amounts to spread democracy. Well, RT's job is to take democracy, take our bullshit, our bullshit organization that we think we have in this country and chop it off at the knees to show us what a bunch of lies it is. So I don't go all out cheering RT, honestly, all the time, because, you know, we don't really want to be undermined. But on the other hand, I love when they call a big nasty BS on something that's being pumped out by the talking heads on ABC, CBS, and NBC, right? So they're looking to shut all that down now. Why would that be? Why would that be? Well, don't you remember Hillary Clinton about we're losing the info war? And that was back again, 2010, I think she said that. Those pesky alternative media people. And because the internet is global, oh my God, people can get news from outside the country. I mean, how long is it going to be before they put a filter like China does on our internet to stop us from seeing anything outside our country? And they're going to protect, of course, our country and all of our allies. So that must mean like the UK and any other, Australia probably, any other country that's bent over and spread them. Said, we're with you, USA. We're going to help you perpetuate these lies against these pesky thinkers, the thinkers out there that aren't going along with the plan, that aren't going along with this global domination, this medical, industrial, military complex that we're trying to create a new world order. And I mean, it's not just a new world government, it's a new world everything. We forgot to tell you, we are re-engineering all of biological life. Literally, guys, this is what they're doing. And so people are opening their mouths going, hey, Clyde, and you know, there's revolutions going on everywhere. Destabilization. I just saw a brand new one in Macedonia now. Macedonia, I know they've been having some protests and stuff, but I guess things are heating up there too. I'd love to count how many countries are in complete and utter freaking unrest at the moment. Don't think this is by accident. So, I don't want to get too off the topic, but let's look at this NSA21 for a minute. I really think this merging of the internal and external spying cyber patrol operations has something to do with that HR 5181. The NSA is creating a directorate of operations over the next coming months to fuse together its offensive and defensive cybersecurity teams, according to a speech given at the agency today. And this was February of 2016. Essentially, the team that collects information about system vulnerabilities in order to exploit them for espionage purposes will now be working alongside the team that collects information about vulnerabilities in order to protect U.S. networks from cyber attacks. And I love the way they put this. Like, I noticed too in a bunch of the stories, the only thing they highlighted was the cyber patrol portion of what this NSA conglomerate is in charge of. But if you dig back to just a few months ago when Keith Alexander left and this Michael something, I don't remember his last name, the scary dude that took over. If you take a look at what he's responsible for, he's got like 7 divisions or something. That Wired article, I think it's from July 2015, it was Wired, and it was about the NSA. Keith Alexander, it was an expose. It was amazing. And they outlined all the different divisions. And I mean, it's all military intelligence as well as domestic and overseas and cyber patrol. It is the pit of lizards. It is the home of Big Brother. Anyway, the project is described as a 2-year plan to help the agency better address national security threats, especially surrounding its own cyber missions. Signals intelligence, which exploits vulnerabilities to spy on foreign targets, and the Information Assurance Directorate, which protects the NSA's own classified network against spying, will now be combined under the new Directorate of Operations, and the 5 other directorates, in addition to operations, will be created to align the agency's interests. Yeah, what are the other 5 directorates? Those are those other military intelligence divisions. Will be created to realign the agency's interests and development in its workforce, and also refocusing the NSA on what? Oh, conducting research. Come on. Yeah, the NSA is going to be conducting research. We find out from this HR 5181. Let's just go out and find that bill. Because what they're going to be doing is scanning social media, trying to figure out who's spreading propaganda, and then take them out. They're going to be watching. I mean, like, they haven't been doing this already on Facebook and, Google. Google watches everything you do. But now we got this whole big cyber patrol conglomerate involved. Read text. Last update, May 10th, 2016. This is on govtrack.us. You can go there and look at any of the bills that are up in front of the House and the Senate. This is for HR 5181, Countering Foreign Propaganda and Disinformation Act of 2016. It's the Ministry of Truth, people. This act may be cited as, yes, Countering Foreign Propaganda and Disinformation Act of 2016. And I think it's interesting that there's no comma there. So is it countering foreign propaganda and disinformation? Which it probably is. Or is it countering foreign propaganda, comma, and disinformation act? Like being able to feed us disinfo. It is the sense of Congress that foreign governments, including the governments of the Russian Federation and the People's Republic of China, use disinformation and other propaganda tools to undermine the national security objectives of the United States and key allies and its partners. The Russian Federation in particular has conducted sophisticated and large-scale disinformation campaigns that have sought to have destabilizing effects on U.S. allies and its interests. In the last decade, disinformation has increasingly become a key feature of the government of the Russia's Federation pursuit of political, economic, and military objectives in the Ukraine, Moldova, Georgia, the Balkans, and Central and Eastern Europe. So the challenge of countering this disinformation extends beyond effective strategic communications, public diplomacy, requiring a whole of government approach, leveraging all elements of national power. If you remember too, Obama had come out quite a long time ago, and I think it was Petraeus when he was in charge, saying how the internet was the new battleground. This is where we were going to be waging wars. And I guess words are a weapon. If they are going after now other countries that are using the internet to stir up unrest in other countries, when we were just accused of the CIA doing that multiple times, but even down in Venezuela, it's now melting down. Colombia, where Maduro is. We were accused of stirring up a lot of what is going on there now just through social media and through our secret spy ops. But I guess that's okay. And I guess it doesn't matter since the NSA has now merged the internal and the external. We can have online trolls working both sides of the fence, and I bet it's cheaper for retirement and bennies too. You only need one guy, not two. He can be two avatars at once, leaving trolly comments all over for U.S. and Russian YouTube videos. Anyway, what they want to do is develop, plan, synchronize, in coordination with the Secretary of Defense, the Director of the National Intelligence, the Broadcasting Board of Governors, and they're the same ones that are in charge of Voice of America, the Voice of America radio across the world to spread our propaganda, as well as other relevant departments and agencies, whole of government initiatives to expose and counter foreign information operations directed against the United States national security interests and proactively advance fact-based narratives that support the United States allies and its interests. And I was thinking again, when they're talking about foreign nations that are speaking against the United States, that are causing damage to the national security, in that NDAA 2013, where they made it legal to use propaganda, legal quote unquote, to use propaganda against the American public, I was thinking, I think that is the same, very, very same bill that also had talked about, I don't remember what the exact term was that they called us, but anyone who spoke out against the narrative could be considered a quote-unquote domestic terrorist. You're stirring up unrest, and it is a contagion, remember. As they study more and more social media and how things spread, they're getting pretty good at it now. All the secrets of the brain. They've been doing this big brain project. We got good old Tommy Insel, former director of the National Institute of Mental Health, now working over at Google, studying mental illness as a spectrum disorder. And, as they're cracking all these genomic secrets, they're also finding out that every single one of us is a defective human. And we have issues. It wouldn't be too far of a stretch to be able to name anyone doing what I'm doing now, or posting something on Facebook, or uploading a video, to totally call us rebel rousers stirring up trouble against domestic interests. And once you have been dubbed on the other team, you're not protected by U.S. laws necessarily. I mean, look at what happened. U.S. citizens getting drone bombed overseas. And as they're launching all this autonomous warfare, the skies are going to be filled with autonomous drones. Notice how quiet that got. That was out there for a long time. People were screaming, and now people are buying little mini drones on Amazon because they're on sale every other day. And they forgot all about how scary it was going to be to have skies full of surveillance devices that could kill you, if so armed. I mean, some of those police ones that we saw, there was the one in Wyoming. I did that story on Anti-Media. It was the very first weaponized drone that was allowed in the United States. Now there's been a second one that's been allowed, but and at the time they were only using, I don't remember what they were using. It was something non-lethal, so whether it was a taser or rubber bullets or something, but they got rocket launchers and 12-gauge shotguns for some of those military-esque drones out there. All it's going to be is buying option, C and clicking it on to the ones that are already out there. So don't think that is like not happening here, because at some point in the future, I'm sure we're going to see it. It's going to be like freaking Running Man, and they're going to have their HD Argus cameras shooting at 20 bazillion gigapixels, chasing you high speed as you're running, and they're broadcasting it live real time, not only on everybody's mobile device and HD TV, but also on the digital billboards on the roads. Have you seen this person in your home as they zoom in on your face? And they got tasers and laser weapons and grenade launchers as they're trying to bag and tag you. Real-time Coliseum entertainment. Hey, guys, I do see that. It might not be tomorrow. I think it's coming. I don't think there's going to be anywhere to run and hide. And anybody who hasn't eaten the poison to completely numb their brain so they don't even worry about this stuff, don't worry your pretty little head. All the smart people will take care of this for you, because, the scientists are in charge. The scientists are telling you what's right and what you need to survive. And we have all this pesky climate change now. Climate change is going to change the whole equation. We're all going to die because it's too hot, or because we have diseases everywhere. Diseases never, ever before seen. It's just insane. Now we're going to have all these shape-shifting experimental vaccines that we want to try on the desperate and the dying. We definitely are in trouble. There are a couple things I really do want to get into the NSA and crap today. A couple of things I wanted to look at. We talked about utilizing plants to make vaccines from a DARPA perspective, to have them express antigens instead of eggs. We also talked about a whole bunch of scientists working on genetically modified foods: tomatoes, potatoes, rice, lettuce, tobacco, and turning them into vaccinations, edible vaccines. Bananas, there was another one, for use in quote-unquote third world nations. But now they're talking about how wonderful it would be to not have to have needles, and, we don't need refrigeration, and we can just hand them out. We find out then there's also the CRISPR, cut and paste in DNA, CRISPR technology, good old Jennifer Dowda's tech, that now they are using on foods that completely circumvent the very small number of regulations that were ever put in place to even alert us to GMOs being in our food, because, of course, they've been in our food for 20 or 30 years now, and nobody ever told us. But it's because a tomato is a tomato and a potato is a potato. Shh, Johnny, don't worry about it. Just shut up and eat it, and maybe, if you're lucky, it'll have your measles vaccine, right? But it's all coming together, and that was the point of the whole show yesterday. Genetically modified humans, plants, and vaccines. It's all the same technologies. It is all of biology that is being assimilated to their vision of what they want to create. And as they start learning all the push buttons, we did about 3 weeks on gut bacteria and all the different interactions that the gut bacteria has on your body, and one of which is the direct connect to the brain. And how they can manipulate those brain chemicals just by what they put in your gut. And then we find out Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is investing in that spinoff from MIT, making those synthetic biotics, synthetic gut bacteria that can literally be programmed to go in and make changes to your body inside your gut, to detect inflammation, to produce chemicals. Stuff like that. And the synthetic immune systems of IBM and DARPA. There's like 4 different projects going on with the synthetic DNA and these synthetic immune systems. If they haven't started already swapping out DNA strands, and they have. Everything we put into our body affects our cells. And once we end up with that cascade of leaky gut syndrome and whatever, so DNA can pass directly into the gut. We've dug into, there was the Stanford researcher who came from an anti-abortion perspective. She was talking about fetal tissue and these recombatant vaccines that had not only embryonic tissue in them, but they had animal tissue as well, like bovine serums and that. And we just read in a story yesterday, the day before, that bovine serum actually puts your child at risk for mad cow disease. That was like in a National Institute of Health document. But that Stanford researcher, I still have that story up somewhere on my Before the First Cup Facebook page. She had found direct evidence that DNA from all that mad science in that vaccine was actually getting combined and absorbed by the body of the child that it was put into. So they've known that. They've known that for years. So as they're putting more and more crazy shit into our vaccines, into our food, into the air, into the water, it's changing us. We saw an interview with Dr. Perlmutter and Dr. Mercola. Dr. Perlmutter was talking about how for hundreds of thousands of years they've looked at primordial DNA back in the very beginning from fossils and compared it with stuff that's out there today, and there's not been any changes, any significant changes over hundreds of thousands of years until now. And now it's changing so rapidly, they don't know where it's going to go. What's making it change so rapidly, you ask? Well, let's see if we can get a connection here. So I've had this queued up. We probably did this maybe a year ago, but I think it's very pertinent. People don't hear the show every day. If you did, you would have heard this, but I know it's a lot of shows, 5 days a week. Trust me, it's a lot, but it's good. It quells my obsession. It lets me get it off my chest. All right, I got something here. Dr. Mercola talking to Vicki Diebold about GMO vaccines. I think this would be a good kickoff point then to start into the stuff I want to get into tomorrow. So here, let's see if we can get this going. If Skype works, we'll find out. I did not get this pre-configured. And as a matter of fact, this machine was having trouble yesterday. I couldn't hear it in the speakers, but it showed it was playing. So let's see if we can hear it through Skype. All right, here we go. Dr. Mercola interviews Vicki Diebold on genetically modified vaccines that are already being produced and used. Maybe.
Welcome, everyone. This is Dr. Mercola, and today we are joined by Vicki Diebold, who is the NVIC's Volunteer Director of Research and Patient Safety. Professionally, she's trained as a critical care and home health care nurse and has more than 30 years' experience. She also holds a doctorate in nursing and public health. She also just finished serving 4 years as a consumer member of the FDA Vaccines and Related Biological Products Advisory Committee, where GMO vaccines were a topic of conversation during several meetings. All right, so you've served on this FDA committee for the GMO vaccines. I'm wondering if you could expand on just exactly what a GMO vaccine is, give us a little background on how you first became interested in this, and enlighten us about this emerging topic.
Well, there are a number of different genetically modified or genetically engineered vaccines out there. Some of them are quote-unquote naked DNA, where just a piece of the DNA of the organism that causes disease is introduced into the body. And then they range from different types of DNA vaccines to what's known as recombinant DNA vaccines, where the DNA of the pathogen is spliced onto the DNA of another organism, which is then grown in yet cell culture, so that the DNA issues that we're dealing with can be quite complex. So there's a lot of variation and variety in the new technologies that are being used.
And is there any danger inherent to this whole process of creating these new DNA vaccines?
Well, I think there's a lot of danger because we don't know what portion of the DNA can be incorporated into our own genome. We don't know what portion could be heritable to our children. We also don't know what happens when the immune system is exposed to DNA that has been recombined in lots of ways that the human body, through the course of time, has never had any exposure to. What diseases of the immune system may occur because of these exposures.
Is there, from your perspective, is there any risk or danger of these genetically engineered foods or vaccines to human health from what you've seen and reviewed in the literature?
Dr. McCullough, I think that there are risks to human health that have not yet been understood, and they come from issues related to the DNA of the pathogenic virus. It comes from the DNA that the virus may be spliced onto. In the case of flu vaccine, it's spliced onto something called baculovirus, and in the case of hepatitis B vaccine, it's spliced onto yeast. It comes from the cell cultures that are used to grow the vaccines. The new flu vaccines will be grown in armyworm cells. And it also comes from the fact that we have to use an adjuvant in genetically engineered vaccines to make them work. So there are lots of opportunities for DNA-related threats to human health, as well as threats from the chemicals that are used in the adjuvants.
Now I'm going to stop for a second. Hold on, let me turn the volume down. Now, this interview was from 2012. Things have changed a lot since 2012 because you don't necessarily need adjuvants anymore when you're using a synthetic DNA. Here, I want to now skip over to a New York Times story. We had started reading this last week. Protection without a vaccine. This is the one where they are talking about building a synthetic immune system last month. And this story is from March 9th. Of 2015. So this is from February of 2015, last month. A team of scientists announced that they could prove to be an enormous step forward in the fight against HIV. Scientists at the Scripps Research Institute said that they developed an artificial antibody that, once in the blood, grabbed hold of a virus and inactivated it. The molecule can eliminate HIV from infected monkeys, from that fruit bat tree, and protect them from future infections. But this treatment is not a vaccine, not in any ordinary sense. By delivering synthetic genes into the muscles of the monkeys, the scientists are essentially re-engineering the animal to resist disease. Researchers are testing this novel approach not just against HIV, but also Ebola, malaria, influenza, and hepatitis. Now, you just started talking about some of those same very vaccines. And they've now, it seems like flu and hepatitis especially are two that they do all kinds of crazy stuff to in the lab. That's also influenza was the one that the DARPA Blue Angel program started with, and then it ended up on Ebola. Anyway, the sky's the limit, says Michael Farzan, an immunologist at Scripps and lead author of the new study. Dr. Farzan and other scientists are increasingly hopeful that this technique may be able to provide long-term protection against disease for which vaccines have failed. This first human trial based on the strategy called immunoprophylaxis by gene transfer, or IGT for short, is underway. So this was already human trials a year ago, and several new ones are planned. It could revolutionize the way we immunize against public health threats in the future, says Dr. Gary J. Nabel, Chief Scientific Officer of who? Oh, Sanofi. Sanofi is the one that's rolling out the dengue and the hoping to have the first Zika vaccine coming soon. Whether IGT, immunoprophylaxis by gene transfer, will succeed is still an open question, but researchers need to gauge its safety and effectiveness in humans. Yes, well, they're going to transfer genes from what they inject into you. The prospect of genetically engineering people to resist infectious disease may raise concern among patients. Yes, he said it. Genetically engineering people. The reality is we are touching third rails, and so it's going to take some explanation. This is Dr. David Baltimore, Nobel Prize recipient and virologist at Caltech, who is now testing this genetic vaccine against a number of diseases. Conventional vaccines prompt the immune system to learn how to make antibodies by introducing it to weakened or dead pathogens, or even just the molecular fragments. Our immune cells produce a wide range of antibodies, some of which can fight these infections. And, let's add adjuvant to there. So then they discovered that if they put something in like aluminum sulfate or, the shark cartilage stuff, I can't remember what it's called, which is the one that they used in the anthrax vaccine. It doesn't matter. But adjuvants, when they put adjuvants into the vaccine, it's not only does your body recognize that there is a pathogen and start building defenses against it, but then the adjuvant will irritate the immune system even more, so it has an even stronger antibody response to then extend your protection. So like in animals, we have that 1 year versus the 3-year rabies vaccine. The adjuvant was the aluminum sulfate. And oh, by the way, that's what's been pointed to is causing the sarcomas in cats, is the adjuvant. They've told me to not get the 3 years rabies vaccine. It's the adjuvant that could be causing the problems. But in these new DNA vaccines, they don't necessarily need adjuvants because it's going in and making physical changes to the DNA. It's not giving you stimulation. It's providing an intelligence, a change in how your body reacts to pathogens. It says in some cases, these antibodies provide strong defenses. Vaccinations against diseases such as smallpox and measles can lead to almost complete protection. Now, here's another interesting question. So if vaccines against measles can lead to almost complete protection, and the majority of American children are vaccinated as part of their childhood vaccines against measles, then why the hell were they so worried about Johnny at Disney World not having his vaccine? And why was he so dangerous to all these other children at Disney World who were already vaccinated? That poses a really good question. They were just stirring up fear and bullshit. That's all it was. But you know what? Don't worry about it because the doctors told you Johnny was dangerous. he should be ostracized because his mommy didn't fall into one of the non-thinking consumers. She actually asked questions. She actually said, you know what? Maybe, just maybe, we don't need formaldehyde in our little baby right away. You know, measles was never a killer disease to begin with, even back in the days before mass vaccination. You might have had some ancillary illnesses that came, you know, just like they do with anything, encephalitis or whatever, for a few kids with weakened immune systems. But the majority of the kids who got measles got a little bit sick and then it was over. Just like chickenpox. Like, why the hell is there a chickenpox vaccine? Who didn't have chickenpox growing up? All right, anyway, back to this. IgT, that is this immunoprophylaxis by gene transfer, this newfangled way to make vaccines, making changes to your DNA, is altogether completely different from a traditional vaccine. It is instead a form of gene therapy. Now, we read yesterday they just approved the very first gene therapy to be used on children in Europe. They're going to use it on the bubble boy disease, but to make live changes to DNA in a living human. Where are the ethics in that? Well, there aren't any. And of course, they're preying on the extremely desperate because those children who are born with that genetic disease only tend to live about a year. I was asking yesterday, who would do that to their child? Well, if your kid only had a year to live, or you could have this, you know, really experimental treatment and they could probably sell it to you, put a nice big bow on it and say how you're going to be helping humanity through your sacrifice. And they'll promise you fame and fortune. Your name will be in a book. They'll write books about Johnny. Johnny will be the very first human to have tried this therapy, and he could save millions of lives. Yeah, I could definitely see how they could use psychology to convince some grieving, desperate parent to step right up for mad science and live DNA edit their child's DNA. Gene therapy, guys. That's all it is. It's just called gene therapy. Look, it's not scary. Scientists isolate the genes that produce powerful antibodies against certain diseases, and then they synthesize artificial versions. What's very interesting, so we made the connections yesterday between that George Church from Harvard who wants to create the synthetic human genome, and he actually talks about being able to engineer the ability for humans to be able to detect and destroy any pathogen that they're exposed to in the future with a synthetic immune system. So this is all part of the same project, it appears, from a few different directions. I mean, obviously, if you're going to engineer a human genome, you might as well, a synthetic human genome, you might as well engineer the synthetic immune system that goes along with it. These genes are then placed into viruses and then injected into human tissue, usually muscle. And don't worry about it because we've also read they're going to put it into the food. Edible vaccines. Coming to a table near you, Johnny will never know his banana is tainted, especially if there's no labeling. These viruses then invade human cells with their DNA payloads. So these are these synthetic genes that are placed into viruses, whether it be a biological virus that has gut sucked out or a synthetic virus-like particle that was created in a lab and then given a Trojan horse payload. It's loaded with its DNA payload. It invades human cells, and the synthetic genes are then incorporated into the recipient's own DNA. And if all goes well, these new synthetic genes that have incorporated themselves into the unfortunate recipient's DNA will then instruct the cells to begin manufacturing powerful antibodies. Dr. Philip R. Johnson, Chief Scientific Officer of the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, and we found out University of Pennsylvania has had a lot to do with a lot of this edible vaccine manufacturing. I believe that they were working on the lettuce vaccines at University of Pennsylvania, we read yesterday. Well, this virologist at that very same school had an idea. Why not try to give broadly neutralizing antibodies to everyone? Well, how could we do that? Especially when we have all these resistant consumers and parents that are reading rumors on the internet. All these anti-vaxxers are putting out propaganda that's working against the machine. We better shut them down with surveillance centers and new anti-propaganda bills at a federal level. Yes, those anti-vaxxers causing problems. But let's just give broadly neutralizing antibodies to everyone and let's sneak it into their salad or their banana, potato, tomato, rice. We found out even zucchini and yellow squash has been genetically modified. What? Guys, this is just so ugly. It is painting such an ugly, awful picture. At the time, Dr. Johnson and others were experimenting with things such as hemophilia, but now they figured out how to load genes into viruses and then persuade those genes and viruses to invade cells. So it occurred to Dr. Johnson that he might be able to use this strategy to produce genes for powerful antibodies in a patient's cell. So let's just give it to everyone. Let's just create all kinds of mad science and see what happens. And nobody will ever know. After the plant cells begin producing these antibodies, the patient will be, quote unquote, vaccinated. All right, guys. Well, make sure you stick around. It is Wednesday. Ms. Lonnie Clark is live. Up next, we have Josh live tonight at 6. The Boys from New York at 8 p.m. Eastern. Brand new Liam Sheff at 9. And Media with Nick and Debbie at 11. All right, guys, have an awesome Wednesday. I'll catch up with you tomorrow. Everybody take care.